A. Welcome to our, well, we've had our inaugural meeting last week, but this is our first full council meeting of the term, so welcome everyone to our meeting this morning. Any apologies? Any conflicts of interest for recording? No. I have no acknowledgements that I'm aware of. Is there any other acknowledgements anyone would like to raise?
Oh, just had one, Mr. Mayor. That was Warwick Cross for passing. Warwick was a very valuable member.
Warwick Cross?
Warwick Croft.
Croft, sorry.
Yeah, from lived in sort of Summerhill, Cust area. Very widely known in the Oxford Lions community and across various sporting and recreational endeavours. Passed away about a month ago, I think. So it'd be nice. I think the Oxford Lions were really valuable.
Yeah, I think. Thank you. I think a moment's silence would be very appropriate. Thank you. We come to the confirmation of minutes of our meeting held last Wednesday. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Bartle, seconded Councillor Goldsworthy. Is there any, would either of you like to speak? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. No deputations and presentations. There's no adjourned business. We come to the first is report 7.1, which is the governance arrangements for the Water Services Unit. Thank you. Welcome, Kelly. Just in mind is that this was discussed in the last term of council and the recommendation that this is an all-council role. So I'm sure Kelly will take us through that, but that was the recommendation of the last term of council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
So the purpose of this report is to seek your approval for the proposed governance structure of the water services functions of council. So as was just mentioned, this recommendation was presented to the previous outgoing council and was formally endorsed for the incoming council to consider. So our water services delivery plan was approved by the Department of Internal Affairs back in July last year, and this includes a requirement to establish a dedicated governance structure for water services. And this is primarily in response to the high level of compliance reporting requirements and also for the need to have operational separation of our water services functions. So we need to ensure that council has a clear and effective governance structure in place for its water services. The recommended approach is to create a dedicated section within council regular meetings, specifically petition for water services. So you'll see in the report there'll be a part A for ordinary council functions, a part B for water services functions. This report also seeks approval to adopt a similar agenda structure for the UNR committee, where they would also have a dedicated water services section within their agenda. Noting that the UNR committee will continue to operate under its current delegations and still be able to consider water services matters under their delegations and make recommendations to council. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions of colleagues? Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kelly, for the report. Can you sort of broadly give us an example of what sort of high-level water services and what's day-to-day operational? Because I'm sure that we'll potentially blur those lines if we're not careful.
So currently the Commerce Commission is seeking feedback on information disclosure requirements. So that is information, both financial and also performance information, that we are going to have to provide through to the Department of Internal Affairs and to the Commerce Commission. So that type of information that is specific to water services will come to Part B of the council meeting to make approval and recommendations for. There will be, naturally, there's a lot of work that we will actually undertake together. So an example of a report that would come to the ordinary part of council is where we're seeking approval for a budget that includes both roading as well as water services works to be integrated together. So that would be considered by the whole council. So that's water specific and a requirement that's being imposed on us by legislation, that'll come through to the water services part of the agenda.
Just supplementary, Mr. Mayor. So, an example, that the workflow doesn't have to come up through you, say UNR committee, council, water services. It's actually separate and discrete.
No, so it could actually be considered by a recommendation from UNR to the Water Services Committee or from UNR to Council.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Redmond, did you have something on the add, Deputy Mayor Redmond?
Thank you. I had to listen closely to that, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Kelly, for the report. I wondered in paragraph 3.15, where you provide service arrangements for adjoining councils, who's going to provide that? The new Water Services Unit or PDU? And in which case, where do those funds end up?
So as the report already sets out, there are already arrangements in place where the Project Delivery Unit, PDU, provides engineering modelling services through to the Huranui District Council. So those functions, we understand, will still continue, even though Huranui and Kaikoura are setting up a water services CCO. Those funds will be between Kaikoura District Council or the Water Services CCO and the Project Delivery Unit. And that's where we see the predominant working between neighbouring councils to occur, but that doesn't exclude if there is some asset management or bylaw or other strategy type work that's undertaken by the Waimakariri Water Services Business Unit, that wouldn't exclude there being some working arrangement with financial recognition coming back for any time from that unit occurring as well. But at the moment, we're predominantly set up for that to be provided through by the Project Delivery Unit.
Thanks for clarifying that. On page 33 in Diligent, the water regulators' fees, how do they base those fees? On population, or what's the basis for their calculation?
So they have based it on population. One of the points we submitted on was we believe that it should be based on the number of connections, and they did, both the Commerce Commission and Tamara Arawai got a lot of submissions in terms of how they should assign or apportion their costs across the country, even from Watercare, who actually pays quite a large proportion of fees given their population in the Auckland region. They had decided to keep it as simple as possible, just purely based it on population, whether you receive a public water supply or not.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Mealy.
Morning, Kelly. Just with regard to in paragraph 1.6 where it says that water service related reports that cover broader matters can be put under part B in the council agenda. Are we talking about things like where, say, a drainage reserve, an SMA or something is considered to be a recreational asset as well, or say the Abbey Fields land, that kind of thing? So that's where those would go.
Yeah, they would be examples. So where the nature of the report is actually covering more than just purely water services functions, rather than duplicate taking part of the report to the Water Services Committee and part of the report to Council, it makes sense from an efficiency point of view just for that to be considered by Council.
Just to clarify, just a simple process, and it might be budgets. So in a CCO, budgets were presented to the board, and in the situation we're presenting it to the full council rather than going through UNR. So it's trying to maintain the same sort of processes we have now without trying to reduplicate what we would do under a CCO. And so therefore the council would receive the normal budgets through its normal budgeting process and approve those budgets in the same process as what it would normally do under the new rules. And we're going to, some of this you have to tease out and work through as we go through it. Under the new rules, they have to produce a ring-fenced set of annual accounts and budgets effectively, as what a CCO would do. So if you think about it like the Te Kauhaka Trust, it would be exactly the same process, but we do it within the council itself rather than trying to push it through UNR and then UNR present it through to the council. It's just, that would be a waste of time and effort. So the full council will come in and view the budgets. They'll also approve the annual reports as well, and that's just the same sort of process that you go through with council.
Thank you. Councillor Ken, so for newer colleagues or those returning, if you want to ask a question, just grab my attention and I'll get you on the list. Same with speaking. Do my best, or if I haven't got my attention, let me know.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Keynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Kelly, for your report. The Act includes specific provisions for water service providers needing to enter Maryland for infrastructure work. They must seek written permission from landowners at least 30 days, working days in advance, ensuring landowners are informed and can participate in decision-making processes. So the processes that we're setting up, will they meet the provisions of the Act in regards to the Maryland, please?
Yes, they will. So it's one of the work packages that we've identified as part of the Water Services Establishment Work Program. So previously we used to have rights for access and putting infrastructure on private land and Māori land under the Local Government Act. So there are, like you point out, there's new provisions under the Local Government Water Services Act that came into effect in August this year. So we are currently working on our protocols and processes to make sure that we're meeting those new requirements.
And that also includes the decision-making processes as well?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Dugan.
Okay. Sorry, I haven't got my computer here set out, but I'm just inquiring when I was looking at the water services, how does it work with the reserves and such like that are taking water in the council? How does that work? Like for cricket and such like, where a lot of water's taken.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. So in terms of our water services business unit, that as well as water supply and wastewater, it does also include urban stormwater, rural land drainage and stock water. So we're putting all of that in the same unit. And in terms of urban stormwater, there's a lot of our infrastructure that interrelates with green space reserves, like you point out. So we will need to make sure that we are working closely with the green space team when we do any modifications or upgrade works in those areas. There's an important point to note here that even though our water services unit includes urban stormwater, rural drainage and stock water, in terms of the Commerce Commission, we only need to financially report on the drinking water and wastewater aspects of it.
Okay, any further questions? Come to a series of recommendations. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Fulshan, second. I'm looking to my right. Councillor Redmond. apparently Councillor Redmond was speculating earlier that most moved and seconded were coming from the right, so I'm determined to look to my left this time round. So whichever side is left, my left this side. Here we are. So Councillor Fulton, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can see some psychology in action already. I'd like just like to commend this to colleagues. This is the result of a tremendous amount of work, and both by the Mayor and staff and the councillors of the previous triennium, as we call it. There's been a lot of engagement. This is, has been said so often, the result of a community consensus that we do control our own affairs, and that we will look over our water services very closely. And I think there's some real efficiency in the way that this is proposed, that we don't have sort of a whole lot of sort of rat alleys of work programs and budgets, and we can all see it, all the budgets, all the work programs, all the priorities all together and sort of ideally in one meeting at a time. And so I think this has got a lot of efficiencies, a lot to commend it, and it is the right structure and it's the right way for waimakariri. So yeah, I urge colleagues to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report refers to our internal business unit. We consulted on that some time ago, and it was what our residents and councillors at the time wanted. The detail is still a work in progress as we get our minds around ring fencing, I guess, and whether follow the money, does it go to the water services unit or the PDU if we're doing work for our adjoining neighbours. So we are collaborative and certainly wish to support Horonui and Kaikoura in their water services. The proof of the pudding is in recommendation I. Not only were we the first council to have an internal business unit approved, the benefit of that is going to be achieved in the costs that our residents will be paying. And I note in recommendation I, it refers to the lower overheads we have compared with perhaps a CCO, and the less borrowings that we will need to achieve the provision of these services. It refers to the third lowest average water rate in New Zealand. So when this comes to pass, I think we're going to be the envy of many councils. And the good thing is that our residents and ratepayers are going to benefit from our foresight and the structure that we've set up. So I think it's a very good report. It's early days. We're way ahead of the game in terms of the dates we have to meet. So I think that's a credit to the previous council and also staff. So I commend these recommendations to you.
Thank you. Further speakers? I'm going to support the recommendations here, and just to acknowledge the comments already made. It was about this time, it's the 31st of October, 3 years ago, that myself and the Mayor of Christchurch flew to Auckland to be with the Mayor of Auckland at the time, and that was a real turning point in this discussion, was to have the councils, the major councils, and most of them joined up on an alternative model, which we then, as we all know, tried really hard to change the previous government's view. And it was an incoming government who picked up the policy that has led to where we are today. So we can all feel very proud of that. Now, while the council was leading that, I really do want to, as has been mentioned, acknowledge our staff who were at the forefront of that and that advice that we were receiving at the time and what was best for our community. And we can be very proud of where we've landed, because As has been mentioned, we were the first in the country to be approved as an in-house, and it was the second in the country overall for our water services delivery plan, and that's been no mean feat. A huge amount of effort's gone into that. So the governance arrangements that have been set out here are those which mean that we're in compliance, but also ensure that we're keeping the effective oversight of that at this level, which I think is a really important signal, given how much this means not only to our community, but we want to make sure we get it right, because overall it is our responsibility. So I'm in full support of this, and certainly commend the work of our staff and all the elected members who have backed this over the period of time. I think it's one of those moments where we can tip our hats and say, job well done, team. Any further speakers? Right of reply if you wish, Councillor Fulton.
No, well said, thank you.
I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare it carried. Thank you, Kelly. So the next is the approval of subdivision contribution program. So Joanne and Kieran, welcome.
Thank you, and it's lovely to see you all.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, so this report is seeking Council's approval for the roading subdivision contribution program for this current year, and it is also noting an anticipated budget overspend within the area. Finally, it seeks approval for this scheme design for River Road Stage 2. The subdivision contribution area covers instances where council is required to contribute towards the cost of upgrading a road or roading infrastructure, and this can be related to residential and commercial subdivisions or developments, and also where there are requests for sealing under the seal extension policy and the private funding of seal extension policy. We've included a summary of commitments within the report itself. The extent of and timing of development is often very difficult to anticipate because obviously that work is outside of council's control, and as such there are I guess a number of projects which are likely to proceed over the next 12 months to the end of the financial year, and we are likely to see an overspend in the area. We do generally manage this on an overs and unders basis, and last year was the first year where we did overspend in that budget area as was anticipated, and the previous years, 7 years were underspent. River Road scheme design the approval is included within this report. I just did want to note that this design has been undertaken to align with the previous stage 1 work which was done, so matching the lane widths which were widened through that project to make sure that there was adequate space there for the heavy vehicles that do use that route. So we have been very cognizant of that as part of the design. And so that's around about an extra 750 millimetres road width we will be providing there. We have allowed additional budget within this area to cover the 2 gaps. So the development that is proposed, I think it's number 59, 79, okay, is if that frontage did urbanise and not the property next door at 69, would be a small gap, and also through the Emberton Drive. So we have allowed the budget within this area to complete the whole section. With that, we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Just on the Emberton Drive aspect, that's a resident that's been in touch a few times. So how far down will that come, just so?
So not that far. I have spoken to the resident just recently and told him we will look at putting that into our new footpath program coming up shortly. So
the benefit of Councillor Cairns, his wife was sitting at the table we were at yesterday. So yes, it's a matter that's been raised on a number of occasions. Yeah. Any further questions? Councillor, sorry, looking to my right first, now to my left. Councillor Fulton, followed by Councillor Doody. I'll try and look to the back of the room next time. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have to ask, Kippenberger Ave stock pass and the underpass, will we see a time where will that actually need some sort of a crossing from Kippenberger Ave? Is it going with the growing urbanisation? And I realise the notes and saying it's not recommended to try and modify it, but
yeah. So we had brought a report previously to council, to the community board and to council, seeking approval to decommission the underpass. We did quite an extensive piece of work around looking at the feasibility and viability of keeping that underpass as a pedestrian underpass, and due to a number of constraints, that was not the recommendation. So council has approved to decommission that, and we have that out for tender. I think the tender's actually closed and close to award probably.
We're just waiting on the developer to confirm they've got a contribution to make to that tender value. So once they've confirmed that, we'll be in a position to award it.
It is an area with very high groundwater, and that underpass has little fountains in it, and it has been repaired in the past and it just constantly fails. There's also a risk with that one that if the actual pump isn't operating, it fills up with water. So from a public use perspective, there's a lot of issues.
Thank you, Councillor Doody.
They've actually answered my question. Thank you.
Joanne, it's sort of on track here, but I've noticed on River Road, particularly as I use that and around, that our gritted paths don't appear to get the same maintenance on the edges as some areas. Is that a regular program or a contracted efficiency that perhaps needs to be picked up? Because what happens is the weeds are growing right over, and as a result you're losing the timber barrier along there. So there's a number where I've seen that, and I just wonder if that's something we can look at and see whether it can be remedied, unless there's a program in place for that.
It needs to be an area of focus. I acknowledge I don't think it has been. There hasn't been enough focus on it of late, but certainly that is spraying along the edges to deal with the weeds. We also have a number that don't have the timber batten, and then the weeds do just encroach on the edge, but more regular spraying would definitely help that.
So is it included in the contract for that?
Yes, it is, yep,
So,
and we'll follow up to make
so
sure that
Court
that's
just need
occurring.
to
They
deliver.
need to be doing that.
Okay. Perhaps as the portfolio holder, you might just keep that on your list, Councillor Redmond, because I do get complaints about that myself. Thank you. All right. Any further questions? You have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Joanne. The private seal extension, what's the status of that at the moment? Have we got a waiting list or a backlog, should I say?
Yes, for private funding of seal extension is always a choice for council. It's not something that you have to do. There is an allowance for some sealing within that funding area, and in terms of do we have a waiting list, absolutely we do. We have actually quite a long waiting list, with at least 2 of those roads where residents have requested a targeted rate, so that requires quite a significant process to go through. What I am proposing to do is have a workshop with the Utilities and Roading Committee in December to talk about and go through that list of requests that we have as staff. Because yes, there are a number, and it will be something for council to consider going forward as to how we prioritise and which ones we progress and which ones we don't.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So you got a question?
No, I'll move if you like.
Are you happy to move? So Moved by Councillor Ward, seconded Councillor McLeod. There we are, up to the back of the table this time round, so there we are, getting it right around. Would you like to speak, Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you. Oopsie, I've lost it. We did have a workshop on the Kippenberger underpass. I understand that's a priority and that's really good. And the other is that I think it makes sense to do a good job of a road instead of a part job. It's much more cost efficient to do that. So thoroughly approve of what the actions that you're taking, and very happy to approve the recommendations that you've put forward today.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren, do you wish to speak? Any further speakers? Councillor Mills?
Yes, I would just like to note, and thank you for the report, that as you've laid out in this, it's quite difficult to actually know when a developer is actually going to complete their works that they've got consented for development. They sit on them for a number of reasons, and it always makes it difficult for us to match our funding with that. And I see that you've done pretty well over the last 7 years. This is the first time that you've had to actually bring any other budget forward and look at that. So you've done a pretty good job with that. And due to a lot of things happening all at once, now we need to look at this. This is a sensible move, and I'm quite happy to support it because, again, there are always a lot of moving pieces when it comes to development, and it's feast and famine, and we clearly have feast at the moment, so get stuck into it, and I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Right of reply if you wish, Councillor Ward. I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Declare that carried. Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. You can remain, both of you, if you like, for the next one, 7.3, which is the request to bring forward Fernside and Tolls Road intersection improvement.
Thank you. So this report is in relation to the Fernside Todds Road intersection upgrade project. And as noted, we are seeking approval to bring forward $66,000 of budget from the 26-27 financial year. And this is to allow enabling works to happen ahead of the intersection upgrade work. Staff are still working through property negotiations with property owners on Fernside Road to allow the installation of the right turn bay at the intersection. This is a really busy intersection, and it's just going to get more so as development continues within the area. So this is a change to timing of expenditure. However, the funding is all allowed for within council budget. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Fulton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An area like this, proposed works, it makes me think about how does this fit into the bigger building blocks of, Skew Bridge, traffic flows. We do a bit now, we do something on Townsend Road, and then 3 years' time we find that actually it's a major route into the, that side of Rangiora. So is this part of a bigger strategy? And so we don't need to go back and redo or add?
Yes it is, yeah. So we did a significant piece of work about 4 or 5 years ago on the entire West Rangiora route, which included a number of projects that we have over an extended period, and that includes everything pretty much from Oxford Road down Lehmans Road with a number of intersections, upgrades, Fernside Road, Blackstone Road, Skew Bridge, and including Skew Bridge itself. So there's always that bit of tension, which projects do we do first, and how do we prioritise? So we've been through that process, and we've got all of those projects within that package of work.
So we are anticipating certain flows, certain numbers, certain population growth, etc.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Redmond?
Thank you for the report, Joanne. Councillor Fulton mentioned the sort of network picture. Where does Townsend Road, Fernside Road improvements fit in the big picture. Is that something that has priority over Todd's Road in terms of vehicle numbers, or how is that prioritised?
Todd's Road has been prioritised higher because it's currently got no right turn bay for vehicles waiting to turn into Todd's Road, whereas Townsend Road has already had some safety improvements probably 10 to 15 years ago at a guess, and has a right turn bay. So just in terms of providing improved safety at the intersection, Todd's Road was considered to be the higher priority. There are certainly plans for future improvements also, and I think it was more squaring up and just tidying up the intersection in the short term, and potentially I think a roundabout in the long term. But yeah, I can provide a little bit more detail on it to you.
Right, thank you.
Colleagues, I've just emailed you through the the Eastern Roading Program, because there is a whole network. I just found it on our website, which does tell exactly that story. So I've just sent you all the links through, so you can have a look at that in your leisure. Thank you. Further questions? There's a series of recommendations. Is anyone prepared to move? Deputy Mayor Redmond, seconded. Councillor McLaren, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, that it all comes down to priorities, and I accept what Joanne, the riding manager, has indicated. These projects do have to happen one at a time, and prioritising Todd's Road. There will obviously be further work required on Townsend Road as that culvert is widened and that route becomes a more popular entry to Rangiora. So thank you for your report, and you've convinced me that we should be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren?
Thank you. Yeah, great report, and yeah, well, we'd all like to see the complete Eastern Link completed, especially Skew Bridge, and also Fernside Road, Lemons Road, as part of that whole bypass, which doesn't have a right turning lane and no space on the left-hand side for people heading towards Fernside. I'd possibly be erring towards that as being up the priority scale, but any progress on that in the staged way is a good idea. So I'm all in favour of this.
And I'm going to support this. It makes perfect sense, and it is a, as has been mentioned, a progressive step of improving these. And as there's been increasing development on this corner now, we've got Sutton Tools. There is a major business, and then others further down. With the business park, this has become really important that we get this work complete, as is the pending works that are coming shortly in Townsend Road to replace the narrowed section there where the culvert is there now. It's an entire narrative of works, so I've sent you through that link so you can see that for yourselves of all the things that are proposed that actually will make this part of our district work Skew Bridge and the other projects that we've been advocating for. Further around the Tuahiwi, or further down Tuahiwi Crossroads, it's a complete story. There's not just one fix, as we've discovered through this. There's a whole range of things that need to be done. So this is an important step in that, and so I fully support us bringing this forward at this point to get it done. Any further speakers? Councillor Mealings, followed by Fulton.
Thank you. I am aware that there is an awful lot of new development that will be coming on stream in due course in this area that will be feeding into this road, and this is a good proactive step that needs to happen. You know, build the well before you need the water, and that's what we're doing here, so I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's been a good discussion here with the sort of the cascading effect of growth and having to plan for the whole network. So I thank the Mayor for sending that information through, showing the whole network. It's an opportunity actually just to note, actually, there's been seems to be a lot of painting work and upgrades to some of our old rural sort of narrow, where the culverts are and those concrete sides that are crumbling and looking decrepit. The visibility of some of those is really important, particularly with sunstrike and the like. So some of those areas where we don't have the budget to spend on that, I really commend that work, wherever it's come from, because it's really valuable when you're driving along and there's a large truck coming towards you and you're deciding which one goes through the gap first. So that sort of safety improvements are also really valuable as we budget for, I suppose it's an urbanisation of our roads. So thank you, and yeah, I'd support this recommendation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a question, or would you like to speak, Councillor Ward?
Question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Just coming out of Todd's Road, turning right into Fernside Road, there's often trucks and trailers. Is there enough width in that intersection that's going to be for trucks and trailers wanting to turn right, for traffic wanting to turn left onto Fernside Road, to accommodate both those vehicles, those types of vehicles?
It certainly was not designed as a two-lane exit. So if there's a vehicle waiting to turn right, then the vehicle behind will have to wait for that gap to clear.
I think the demand to turn right, so you're talking about out of the intersection, that the demand would largely be left. There would be a much smaller demand to the right out of the intersection.
Yeah, I know that it's done where I live. It's a frustration getting onto Northbrook Road where people are turning right, and there's just not enough space for you to come alongside to turn left, and therefore you can be there for ages. So I just wondered whether we really should be looking at that, or whether for safety reasons we don't do that.
I think the scheme design has been approved. Yeah, we've been through the approval process with the scheme design, but we will have a look at it. We'll have a look and see whether there is any additional space that could be gained there or not.
Yeah.
It is always a tough balancing act, because sometimes if the more space you allow, then if you've got someone sitting beside you, people can't see, and then they take a chance, especially if it is a truck, and you can't see past it, then you can actually introduce the safety issues that you're referring to. So we will have a look at it and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? We've got a series of recommendations. Is prepared to move? Councillor Bartle, seconded by... Oh, I'm sorry, we were in debate. Excuse me, sorry. My diligence just all packed up, so I was a bit flummoxed by that. Doing the old restart and seeing if that'll get it going. Moved and seconded. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Bartle? Sorry, no. Okay. Is it right to reply?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I then put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Thank you. We're at 7.4. Thank you. Welcome,
Good morning.
Thank you.
So I'm here to talk about the procurement and contract management policy. The purpose of the report is, so I'll just start, it's an apology for Ryan Bailey, who was the co-author of the report, who's not available today, but we've got Chris, who I'm sure you probably all know by now, the GM of Finance, so gone a couple of steps up from Ryan. So the purpose of the report is to seek approval for the updated procurement and contract management policy. This was last updated in 2022, and so it's due for review this year in 2025. We sought some feedback from staff before recommending any changes to the policy. Some of the feedback we got was to ensure the policy covers all procurement types. to make sure we review our thresholds in line with inflation and any changes since they were last reviewed, as well as benchmarking against other local government organisations. And also, where possible, to try to align thresholds throughout the policy through the different phases of the procurement cycle, just for simplicity. So the recommended changes are detailed in the report. I'll just highlight a couple of them, but we'll answer questions about any others. So one of the proposed changes is to increase the threshold whereby a minimum of 3 prices is required from 20,000 to 30,000. That reflects the inflation that has occurred since that threshold was last updated in 2008. And it also ensures the council remains at the kind of lower threshold relative to the other councils where we've got data on their thresholds. And also to point out, we still retain other controls we have where that any purchase still has to go through staff with the appropriate delegated financial authority and has to go through a minimum of 2 staff members. Another change recommended was to decrease the threshold whereby a minimum of 3 prices is required for consultants. In the past, we didn't differentiate between consultants and non-consultants. We got some feedback from the management team that there is a requirement to, or there are benefits to having some additional scrutiny on the expenditure on consultants. So that is proposed to come down from 20,000 to 15,000, which will just provide a bit more oversight on that. We're not proposing any change to the open tender threshold, which is at 100,000, so we're not proposing to change that because it just ensures there's plenty of opportunity for the open market to bid on our tenders. And the other types of changes were really just to try to achieve alignment between the planning stage evaluation, the opening and award of tenders and so on, just to help staff really follow the policy clearly. So happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you. Questions? So Councillor Meanings, Darshall, McLaren and Fulton. Thank you.
A quick draw. Thank you for this report, guys. Just looking at that, the draft that's been put forward, it's dated in 2024, and I know that some government updates to recommendations for procurement policy have just come out in the last couple of weeks. Does this take into consideration those changes? And I do see that we have, or did we need to make any changes because we, in section 7 of this draft, which would be on page 67 of diligent, do we cover that sufficiently with those, with the way that it was written in the first place? That's, I think, local, think environmental, social, that stuff. But there have been some changes to take out more stringent requirements.
So I guess one thing to point out with the government procurement rules, they're rules that apply to central government agencies that spend Crown money. So we're not, local government can develop its own procurement policy, and so the central government rules are useful kind of guidance and reference documents, but they're not mandatory requirements for local government, and so local government is free to develop its own policies outside of that. I think with part of your question around the sustainable procurement, that's always a hard balance to how much weighting to give that, and our policy is not prescriptive on that because it would be quite a hard thing to do. So it enables sustainability to be taken into account, but it doesn't mandate you must do this, you must do that, because it would be very hard to, you've also got to think about value for money and that kind of thing as well. So we've tried to find that balance as best we could.
That's great, thank you, because I can appreciate, that is a difficult balance, and I didn't realize that we didn't have to, that it was a recommendation from government, so thank you for that, for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Can I just add, these are just small changes to the dollar values to assist some of the harder areas that we're struggling with. You can see it still keeps intact the tendering at 100,000, which is in the lower range if you look at all councils in New Zealand. It's worth noting that we're also a member of MB, so we take advantage of the national tendering that they go through and get the pricing that they have as well. So it does incorporate those new thresholds and tenders that the government are using. But we are going to undertake a major review of the procurement policy and the actual workings within it, because we have that new portfolio for efficiencies and savings, and there's also something we have to address within the risk appetite that council wants to take when it does tendering, whether it wants to share some of that risk and with the contractors or not. And there's also the area where, though we've got cumulative, so when we have these thresholds, we have to look at the cumulative effect of the pricing. So it's just not 1 year, it's over multiple years. But also see whether there's any ability to break down some of the contracts that we have or increase the terms of them and the capacity of the contract as well. So that's a bit of a major work that we're going to undertake over the next year.
Which is covered, foreshadowed in C, isn't it? The recommendation, Jeff. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Bartle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. With that new portfolio in mind, I was curious, just how do you measure success of these changes? How do you look retrospectively in 12, 18 months' time and say, well, hey, we achieved this result, these changes worked, they were a good call, or how do you assess them?
Yeah, I think one thing that we're able to do a lot more of now with Ryan Bailey's position is a lot more reporting on procurement. So he's starting to work on some dashboards where we can see expenditure by, across all the council and get a lot better oversight of where we're spending our money in what areas, on what contractors, whether they're local or not. So I think, I don't have an exact answer of how we measure it, but we're certainly building the tools to just allow us to measure things and make get a lot more oversight on, holistically where we're spending rather than just bit by bit. Chris might be able to add a bit to that as well.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think part of sort of the overall picture is around any commentary around efficiencies and savings that we are locking in as part of the annual plan process. So making sure that we've got that commentary and we're identifying that coming out of these processes. I think your point's probably more to the success of the policy itself. I do think, in terms of those thresholds, it's monitoring how they're being utilised and using that data that Colin's referring to that we've refined quite well, I think, to date. So I think it's very much working on enhanced reporting through the management team from that information.
It's certainly an area which we want to take a stage further. I remember when we developed our procurement strategy and policy, and that's something we need to look as well, the strategy document with the late Richard Mackenzie Brown. And we asked them the same question. So how are we going to measure this? And anecdotally, there's savings. The numbers come up with the savings of having just a procurement policy in place. So we'll have a look at and see what that looks like. It's quite often you're actually dependent on the market conditions at the time. So you can look at a recent tender that we put out, thinking it was going to cost us 400,000, and actually come in at 4 million, wasn't it? And it came in at 2.4 million. So we actually did quite well on that one. But if the economic environment conditions were a little bit different, and the market was a little bit more looser, I suppose you put it, not tighter, we may have ended up at 4.5 million. So, and the other thing we need to test too is the time frame of our contracts. Is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? So if you look at one of the contracts we put out recently, we had 7 years to try and get a better price. It gives the contractor more certainty of making a little bit of profit over a period of time, so they'll get a better price If it's a big contract, it might attract a lot more players into the market. So there's a few things we need to actually look at when we take into consideration measures and how well we're doing. But I always remember that statement that Richard made, and it was that it's anecdotally sometimes that you measure it by in terms of its success.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's great.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
2 questions, Mr Mayor. Where a minimum of 3 prices is not required, how's the decision made regarding selecting the one contractor? Second question, which you might be able to answer at the same time, is why not raise the threshold to 50,000 to align with the North Island councils, which appear to be up on that level?
Yeah, so I think one thing to remember, these are minimum requirements. So if you were to, you wanted to buy something and you thought it was worth $20,000 and you didn't know who to invite, you shouldn't just go to someone who, with no, you should actually seek multiple prices in that case. So it doesn't say you must get one price, it's saying you must get at least one price, but you also, in order for someone with delegated financial authority to approve that, they must be satisfied it's good value too. So that's just the minimum. So if you didn't know, if you didn't have a good confidence in who you're inviting and that they were going to provide you value and that they would do good quality work, then you shouldn't invite them in the first place. So that's the key thing. And there could be good cases in a lower value end to go to the open market or to invite multiple if you're not sure what good value is or whether you're going to get it through a single supplier. In terms of why not go to 50, I guess it's a balance. A higher threshold will it does enable maybe some staff to make more decisions at a staff level rather than needing to go to management team or higher up, so which can speed things up, but also it takes away that oversight and scrutiny. So it's really hard to say this is a right or wrong number. It's just finding the best balance that we can find. So I guess the general feeling of staff putting this together was there was some comfort in an incremental change, but not a drastic change. So that's where we ended up with what we recommended.
So do you know why all those North Island councils went to 50,000 as their threshold?
No, we haven't talked to them directly, so I can answer that.
But that will be, as part of the review, obviously something can be traversed at that time.
It was fair to note the management team were comfortable with that range.
So
weren't comfortable at taking it higher than 30. If you look at the number that it encompasses, it's total about 300,000 by taking that range up. Also, you've got to look at it in terms of delegations to staff, and I think at that 30,000, there's only about 3 managers in the organisation that has that delegation, and so it would have to be elevated to the level 2 manager to make that decision.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Are we clear as to whether management team need more or less oversight in the whole? Because some of these recommendations seem to sort of have more flexibility on one hand, less flexibility on the other. And I'll save my comments for debate, but I'm confused. I really am confused as to what we're trying to achieve here. What our philosophical position is on management team oversight.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, it's not a drastic change. It's a review and renewal of the policy, so it's just some fine tuning and tweaking, really. But I suppose the change from most procurement types to go from 20 to 30 is more just acknowledgement that it's been more than a decade since that's last been reviewed, and so it's really just an adjustment to keep up with that, and also noting where we sit amongst other councils. And so then maybe the other part of your question though is, but there is a recommendation for more scrutiny on consultants, and I think it's just that's probably just an acknowledgement of an area that can come under particular kind of scrutiny and focus, and so it's just it just brings a bit more oversight to areas that can be more contentious or more open to scrutiny. And you would have probably seen, you know, stuff even with central government focusing on expenditure on consultants. It's just quite a visible topic that requires a bit more careful control on it.
And is there an inflation, a time-based or an inflation-based adjustment to those thresholds? Do you think that's appropriate? Because we've got sort of comparisons there to other councils and, you know, your Aucklands, your Hamiltons, whatever. But we always say we run our own ship here. We have our own efficiencies. We have our own measures and standards. So why are we comparing ourselves on a benchmark? Because if we're the third best, most efficient council for water services in the country, why are we even looking at what Napier City's doing or something? I just wonder whether that's the most appropriate.
Yeah, I guess that's just put in there for information, and you can give it as much or little weight as you see fit.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. I was just curious, by lowering the consultancy from 20,000 to 15,000, how many more consultant contracts are we hoping to capture by lowering the threshold?
That's a good question. We didn't prepare the data for that, unfortunately. We did have a look at the how much would be picked up from the 20 to 30 change, and it was only a small percentage. Yeah, $365,000. But yeah, I don't have the number on the consultants, unfortunately.
I can see by the questions you don't feel comfortable. You're trying to seek reassurance. This is a small movement. The key one here is the 20 to 30, by sure. I think the other thing that you're missing too is that we have a number of panels which we have, and I think it's worth, as I said before, a good review of our procurement policy and a workshop with the council, and taking you through what are the various triggers and so forth that we work with. Because we have a number of panels, for particularly around you know, the physical works for Three Waters, where they apply under the attributes in the first instance. Once they pass those various health and safety and quality aspects of it, they get put into a panel, and then their work is allocated based on quote and so forth. And so therefore there's a number of different areas where you have to move through the procurement policy to understand how we're actually managing getting the best price. The reason we put the consultants down, it used to be $5,000 some years ago, went up to 20,000. We weren't comfortable. 15,000. I think most consultants start around about 10 or 15,000 these days. And the other thing I think was worth noting is that under a procurement policy, anything that's over 30,000, and this is a cumulative works that might go more than 1 year, but up to, I think it's 7 mostly, have to have a full procurement plan which says they've researched the market, they've looked at everything, and this is the best way of procuring. So that could be through tender, or it could be through 3 quotes, it could be recommending it goes through sole purchase, and if it's sole purchase, it needs to go to the management team for approval. So there's quite a lot of hoops that have to jump through to get there.
Did you have anything further, Councillor Goldsworthy? Further question, Councillor Wilson?
Just in light of that, Mr. Mayor, the understanding of the vendor panel, I was on one at the end of the last term. I really had no insight as to what I was meant to be achieving. We have new members here. Is it not worth putting this greater sort of context in front of us, in front of a workshop, in the light of a pending procurement policy review? We seem to be sort of dabbling in one corner of procurement, but without fully understanding this sort of debate. But
no,
full of understanding of how our mechanisms work, our vendor panels. You know, some of us haven't done
I think
this
a
before.
workshop on this sooner rather than later would be very helpful. So there's a greater understanding also with the new portfolio holder as well, and it is indicated in C what we will be looking to do. So look, they're good questions, and this is a matter we get a lot of questions on with respect to procurement. So adjustments and making sure the policy's where it needs to be is something colleagues need to be over, because once we've agreed on that, it's left to staff to determine and work through that. So I think a workshop on that in the near future would be very good. Unless there's any further questions, there's a series of recommendations. So anyone prepared to move? Is moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Marshall. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the report. I am quite comfortable in the direction that this is heading. I understand I asked a question about the thresholds. That was more out of curiosity rather than anything. With regards to the work that's going to be happening this term, I think this is a good step. It's a good start. It's a brush up on what we currently have, and then by the end of the term, we will all have that full context, that full picture, and I trust that the staff will have a really good policy by the end of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bartle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I concur. It's going to be an interesting 3 years. Looking forward to it.
Councillor Mealings.
Thank you. Look, this is sensible. It is a minor tweak to what we have right now. And considering the fact that since 2009, which was the last time this was reviewed, we've had 45% inflation, this is a sensible move. I wish we could go back to the prices that we had in 2009. That'd be great. But in the meantime, before this review, this is fine by me, and I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. Yes, this is simply a review with some minor tweaks to the policy. Some thresholds have not been inflation adjusted. At least one has been reduced and others increased by inflation. It was interesting to note that our sole source procurement thresholds are conservative, and I did find your comparison helpful. We are very conservative compared to some of our colleagues in the sector. Manawatu, Gisborne, Hastings, Whangarei, and who's that other one? Horizons Regional, for example, and figure 1 in the report. I note you also have now defined consultants, and I thought that was interesting to see what that definition, so I went looking for that in the policy. I look forward to, as the CE has mentioned, addressing risk. Traditionally, we are very risk averse, and sometimes I wonder if that means we have increased costs as a result. So it is time to review the balance between risk and costs, and I look forward to Councillor Bartle and his portfolio and how that will be tackled and addressed. So I'm very happy to approve this. It is very conservative, and I can't see any issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Fulton.
No, I'll just be a minor outlier on technical grounds. I think I would have preferred to have actually had the workshop and to have the fuller understanding of the procurement policy. I realise that is a big picture, but you know, this is a potentially probably the most important field of business that we do in council. So the more I understand about it, the better. Not just coming into my portfolio role, but also hopefully for the benefit of other colleagues. So look, I'm not going to object to that, and I certainly, as portfolio holder for water, I won't die in a ditch over it. I just want to.
That's good.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that. I won't have to repeat that again in the next 3 years.
Just like no-brainer.
Yeah, like no-brainer. Yes, so I will support it, just with the reservations. But thank you for considering the workshop for that bigger picture.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Right of reply?
Nothing to reply to.
I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, declare that carried. Thank you, team. We now come to 7.5, which is, well, it says councillor, it's elected member remuneration here. I think Sarah's away, so Jeff's going to handle that.
Yeah. So this report's been recommended by the previous council. It keeps it, well, firstly, the remuneration pool is actually determined by the Remuneration Authority, and that's set at $730,505 for the council, excluding the mayor. And this report basically keeps intact the loading that's put on for the deputy mayor at 28.5%, which was determined quite a long time ago. So it keeps intact that, which is about 12.5% of the pool. The councillors receive individually about 9.7% of that pool. So the balance of the report, I'll just take it as read. Having questions?
Thank you. Questions? Well, I might move from the chair a recommendation. Someone prepared to second? Second, Councillor Doody. Not going to add anything. It's all set, and it is a policy that was recommended by the previous council. I don't want to adjust that. I'm comfortable with what's recommended there, and the Remuneration Authority does set those pools, and whether there's views on that or otherwise, it is independent of us. The only place we have to look at is around the councillor portfolio, deputy mayor, but that would, if we were to start going through that, would take a lot of unpicking, and that has been well set for some time, and I think it sort of reflects the responsibilities and the REM levels of certainly starting to reflect where I think where some of certainly the councillors should be at, given the level of responsibility and workload. So I'm comfortable with what's recommended there. The seconder, you wish to speak? Any further speakers? I'll put the recommendation then. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. So we now come to 7.6, which is the supplementary agenda which has been circulated. Sorry, let's get that out of here. Switch that. So with that, I worked with not only with the Chief Executive, but after all the interviews with you all, I also consulted with Councillor Redmond and Mealings before we arrived at where this would all sit. There are a couple of changes that I would like to just note or make, which was just a couple around Councillor McLaren, who I think I'd inadvertently overlooked, not intentionally. So the first one is under Q, which is the Property Asset Working Group. So it used to be called the Property Portfolio Group. We're changing that title. That's to add Councillor McLaren to that. After a discussion with Councillor Doody, we've agreed that Councillor McLaren will go to the North Canterbury Museums group, simply because it aligns with his portfolio and interest area. So thank you, Councillor Doody. The other is the EE, which is actually the spelling of Councillor Kearns isn't right here. Councillor Kearns, Fulton Powell, and I'm going to add Councillor McLaren to that group too. And over the page under MM, appoints councillors as listed, and also adding Councillor McLaren to the Facilities and Consents Fee Waiver Subcommittee. Under DDD, which is the over the page, was also to add Councillor McLaren to the Arahatia Te Awa working group, which means Cherish the River. So they're the changes proposed. As I mentioned last week when we were talking about other appointments, it's just always a balancing act trying to get everyone into what they would like. Also, feedback from the groups where a number of you are currently represented, where they'd like to continue the appointments, and also the opportunity for a bit of refresh as well, because as I said during the interviews, no one has any preemptive rights over any of the committees. It's all up for discussion. I like to think we've got it right. I'm happy to review this at about 12 months' time, and we can have a look at that and just see how workloads are going for everyone, and whether there's some changes needed or an opportunity to refresh at that point. And I think that's possibly a good point there. And I know, like Councillor Mealing's looked at her own workload, and we've recommended a different representative for Wellbeing North Canterbury, for instance, and some have been on other bodies for some time, and it might be an opportunity to do a change then. But I'm happy for, in a lot of instances, for this to continue over the next year, and let's have another look at it and see how that's going. Any questions? Councillor Goldsworthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I potentially put a stick in the mud?
Yes.
Noting that we're looking at appointing Councillor McLaren into the Promotions Associate Review Board.
Yep.
If it would be all right with yourself and the council, potentially it would make more sense for him to replace me on the Rangiora Promotions Board to make efficiencies and connections there.
I'm happy for you to continue in promotions. You expressed a willingness to do so.
I would like to. It's just I note that I'm not on that working.
Oh, well, you can, do you want to be on there as well?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm not upset. I'm just thinking it would make a bit more sense.
I just was looking for a bit of a different perspective on there. So that's why I put Councillor McLaren there. If you'd like to be on that promotions review, I think Councillor Cairns would welcome that. So why don't we put you on there as well?
You're not doing enough.
There, give yourself another.
But thank you very much, Mr.
So actually, that area is one that we've really got to get right. So the more that are on there, they've got some experience, the greater help that will be. And I know that we've got Councillor Fulton there as well. Any other questions? Councillor Fulton?
I did just have a question on WW. That's for myself as the Oxford Rural Drainage Advisory Group appointee, which I already am and was in the last term. I'll be there as portfolio holder. Is it worth considering? I noticed that means that I'm in both roles, and it's also an evening meeting. I just feel it would be worth benefiting from an outside perspective, someone else to come in as a council appointee. I know it's in Oxford, and it's also the timing that the meetings are often evening meetings. And
relaxed about that. I was just wanting to make sure that we look, I got feedback from our advisory groups that they were too elected member heavy, and so the reason was to rationalise that a little, and also noting you were the portfolio holder also, so that where the real benefit's coming is actually from the community. And while the elected member is there, they're not there to drive that work. It's actually from the community. So that was my thinking there when I was looking at rationalising that, because that was the feedback I got, especially in why I've made you the portfolio holder in general, is to really want to see some action in these rather than a lot of talk fests where we don't get action and resolutions. We've got to get the drainage aspects right this term. But look, if you want to step back from there, I'm happy to consider another
it's a relatively settled group, I think. So I see where you're coming from there. So,
that was the thinking there, but it's good to test that. Other questions? Councillor Cairns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to be pedantic, but in terms of DD, in terms of the Kaiapoi Promotions Association, talking to the chair yesterday of that organisation, he was suggesting that he would prefer to have only one representative on there. So is it possible to actually have DD and instead of having will also, but have may appoint a member to the Kaiapoi?
Well, I think that they'll need to write to us, because that's formally in the, they've requested that in the past, and if they'd like to change that, it will be up to that body to do so. So if they write into governance, and then it'll be up to the community board to determine that. At this point, it's not for us to make that decision.
Could it be the same with neighbourhood support in terms of we currently now have 5 councillors on that committee, and if we were to then appoint 4 community board members, would be slightly over.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but that's how they've requested it.
Yeah.
That's a tidy up that needs to happen, and that's perhaps something for Courtney to perhaps if she could note that. Sarah and the team can contact those groups and just see if they want to change that. But at the moment, that's in line with what they've requested, as I understand. So I wouldn't want to change it here. but subsequently we could look at an adjustment to that if that's what.
That'd be lovely. Thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions? All right, someone prepared to move the appointments with the changes we've noted? Councillor McLaren, seconded Councillor Doody. Do you wish to speak?
Only that I hope there's some support around to explain what these committees are and duties and budgets and things. So I might be reaching out to those who've held those positions before for advice and to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doody?
Thank you. No, thank you for that. Thank you.
Any further speakers? All right. Just in answer to that, yes, there will be, and I assume that governance are in touch to connect you with who you need to be connected with. If you've got any questions, then feel free to be in touch with any of us, Bruce, about and our colleagues about how you go about that. With the portfolio responsibilities, as mentioned the other day, there will be a staff member assigned, so you should be notified who that is in due course, if you haven't already. All right. Any further speakers? Right reply if you wish, Councillor McLaren. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. All right. We will come to health, safety and wellbeing, item 8, 8.1, Chief Executive, and then we'll break for morning tea.
Thanks. I'll just take this report has been read. We've got 8 instances over the last month, which is almost half, slightly down than previously. So I'm taking questions. Those shown in Appendix A.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chief Executive? Councillor McLaren?
Just in relation to the incident that occurred at the Rangiora Airfield at 4.2.1, it notes that once the video records and flight data records retained by council are analysed, this incident will be reported to the Civil Aviation Authority. What it doesn't say there is that it's already been notified to the Civil Aviation Authority in accordance with the Civil Aviation Act. I understand that as a certificate holder, the report must be provided within 90 days of the incident occurring. So there's 2 things there, notification and reporting, but I'm not sure, can't see the date that the incident actually occurred, and will those statutory requirements be met?
I'll follow up on that and we'll email the response later on.
Thank you. Any further questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I note on page 157 that it appears a staff member and family were targeted, presumably by a member of the public. That was on the 21st of September. That seems a fairly serious matter. I wondered what steps have been taken.
I haven't got the result of that the police inquiry, but the 105 has been lodged from us as well. I can't give any further information on that in an open meeting anyway.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions? Someone prepared to move the report? Moved to Councillor Fulton, seconded Councillor Goldsworthy. Do you wish to speak? Councillor Goldsworthy? No. Any other speakers? I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We'll break now for morning tea for quarter of an hour. So if we're back here at 11:15, please. Can I sorry, if we can break, Councillor Fulton and see, can I just see we're coming to items referred from community boards, and the first is the school variable speed limits proposal. So, Jillian, if you can come forward. I'm wondering if you've got sort of asked about update from the government, from NZTA on whether funding has become available. And if not, whether there's a proposed recommendation that might go in here if we were to endorse that today. Thank you.
So we are still waiting on a formal response from NZTA in terms of co-funding. So I would be recommending that an additional recommendation be added to note that implementation being subject to NZTA co-funding approvals, which is currently under consideration.
Do you have that for us, for Courtney, that wording?
I've got it written down here. I can
Wonderful.
pop down and give that to you.
Thank you, and that would apply to all the recommendations there, is that correct?
That's all reports. So there are 4 reports within the suite, which has the each school from within each board's areas. They have all been well traversed with the community boards.
Okay.
I would note, sorry, there was just one change through the community boards, and that was Rangiora Woodiend Community Board requested one change. Rangiora Ashley Community Board, sorry, requested one change to their schools, and that was to have North Lowburn School as electronic rather than the static signs. Staff had recommended that school be static, and that was largely due to the much lower traffic volumes through that area. An alternate council could consider is to repurpose some of the existing electronic school zone signs to go in with the static signs in the area if you didn't want to purchase an additional set of signs.
So that's included in the recommendation, is it, from Regulation?
I believe so.
Okay, and that's, at present, could that be something, while it sits in here now, could be revisited? So it's recommending static signs here, is it?
Yes.
Staff recommendation that was in the report was static signs, that's
So the
correct.
board's recommendation, where's that contained?
I'm not sure whether that has come through.
When was that considered by them?
It was considered.
It hasn't, it's not showing in ours, no. It's just showing static signs.
113. Okay. Well, page 113, static. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's saying static, but the board actually, so this is a recommendation that's come through from the board, is it?
The reports are from sorry, I'm just going to the agenda. The reports are from the ones that went to the boards.
10th of September.
So 193 hasn't been updated with the board's recommendation, is that correct?
No, it hasn't, that's correct.
So is it to be updated as a result of that? It'll be up to the council to determine whether or not it agrees with that. Is that proposal that they've asked for, has that been submitted to NZTA or not yet?
We can work that within the cost that's assumed, yes.
I remember the previous council, the costs of maintenance of these and ongoing was raised, I think, by a councillor. Has that been, the cost of that, has that been factored into the budgets going forward, assuming we get the co-funding in place?
It will need to be factored into future budgets as part of the long-term planning process.
All right. So what's here now is with that additional wording for each of the board recommendations. What, can you just remind us what that says?
Sorry, so the new recommendation G, that implementation is subject to NZTA co-funding approval, which is currently under consideration. So in effect, staff would not act on implementing this until we have that decision, which I believe is very close.
Okay. Do you think it's likely we will receive it?
Yes, I do think it is likely we will.
Okay. And just back to the Rangiora Ashley, so is that recommendation to have that it's the electronic signs, is that correct? To be changed in there?
Yes, we can use the electronic signs there.
I'm just making sure we've got the right recommendation here. People want to move differently, that's up to, but it's just a recommendation that's come from our board. All right, so questions of, is there anything else you'd like to raise there, Jane? As you say, it's been well and truly traversed.
Yeah.
Multiple workshops on this. Questions? Councillor Fulton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to question the West Ayrton School. I think in our last workshop, I've never seen West Ayrton recommended for 30. Is that correct? It's currently 40.
It's currently 40, and when we went through all of the community boards, the feedback that we got across a number of the boards was a desire to have consistency, so that we didn't have 30s in one place, 40s in another, 60s in another. So as much as practical, we've tried to do that. So we have used a standard 30 with a couple of exceptions, and that includes one global school on Lehman's Road, where all movements in and out of school are by minibus, so there's no children walking in the area. And the other one is Tram Road, where again their school operation is completely off the road. They've got a car parking area that's off the road. So we have tried to apply that consistency, and that was in the reports that were brought back through the community.
But we did go to the schools to consult, and I don't recall that 30 was what the school was asking for, was it?
Originally, they were assuming what they currently have as worst case scenario. I think at the end of the day that we haven't gone back to the schools to give them a further update. We will do that after we have been, this report has been through council, just to give them an update, but I believe the school was supportive of a 30 West Ayrton school.
Okay, I could check that. Just my final question was just the reference to Oxford Area School, not querying the speed so much, but it does say Showgate Drive, which goes right into the AMP. I don't think are there speed signs in there? Is there actually any awareness that actually this is going to be a limited speed zone during school hours? Because this is a mixed area from a whole lot of user groups, show, school, Pearson Park, the whole lot. I don't think there's a lot of awareness that is one, that it's a council-owned drive in a lot of cases, and two, that it's for school use during those limited hours. Can we raise some awareness of that when we don't have any signage in there saying 30?
No.
A lot of people don't even know it's a council
no, because it's
road.
Currently 50, the same as everywhere else. But the reality is you really can't drive.
Will we have a 30 sign in there of making people aware that is actually a limited speed area?
I'll have a look at that, but just remembering it's not going to be permanently 30, it's only during
limited times.
School hours, and as you drive into that zone from Bay Road, you will drive past the big static signs that will cover that whole area, which says 30 between these hours.
So you think it'll be addressed? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So is there any other questions? Councillor Barton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the 30 flat speed right across the area, because having 40s, because Clarkville School's in that category too, it's currently 40 and dropping to 30 it's only 10 k's. I'm not normally a big fan of dropping speed limits, but to standardise it makes sense, and then everybody's on the same level field, so I think that's good. But my question is, if funding's approved in the not too distant future, as you're anticipating, what is the time frame for implementation and putting it on?
Yep, we would be looking to roll out the signage over the 6 months after Christmas. So having the signs in place or close to in place by the 30th of June 2026, which meets our requirements from the setting of the speed limit rule. So we are required to take all reasonable steps to have done that. If for any reason funding was not approved, then we would come back to council before Christmas, but I'm not anticipating that that will be the case. So we would also work with our comms team on an education and communication piece, so that we let the public know that these signs are being rolled out around the district and what to expect.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Question?
Thank you, Joanne. Two questions. Firstly, State Highway 1, do we have jurisdiction under the legislation to impose the speed limit reductions around Woodend School, for example?
No, we don't, because that is an NZTA action. So we are working with NZTA on that though. We've been in discussion with them on the reduction to 30 kilometres per hour. I think they currently have a 40 variable. They are taking the same approach where all schools, they are dropping them to 30 in the urban areas. But we need to align the timing of our side road signage going out so that it aligns with what they're doing. So we will work with them, but the cost of replacing their signs, those signs will be sit with the NZTA, not with council.
So we are in alignment
Yes.
with the adjoining roads in State Highway 1?
We will make sure that we are.
Right. Secondly, staff and Pete did a good job going around all the schools. Was wider public consultation considered? I realise it's not a requirement, but it wasn't precluded either. Did staff consider consulting with the wider community over both the time and speed, for example? There were differences between Class 1 and 2 schools in legislation.
No, we haven't, because there was no requirement to do so, and because there's quite a tight time frame in terms of implementing these speed limits to meet the requirements of the rule. It is, I guess we've tried to take a pragmatic approach in terms of the time that has been implemented for the schools, and we've worked with each school on when they start and finish to try and ensure we have a time band that can be applied across all schools, so that drivers in our district know exactly what to expect in terms of times that children are travelling at or around the school gate. To go out and consult would mean that we wouldn't be able to meet the time requirements of the rule, I don't believe. And across all of the other RCAs, I am not aware of any that have consulted on variable speed limits. There's no requirement to do so in the rule.
Right. How do our proposals align with Huranui, for example, Christchurch, where motorists are likely to be going through several territorial authorities? Are we in alignment with their proposals?
Yes, I believe we generally are. I think Christchurch City, because they're very urban, they've largely used their 30 kilometre an hour. I know the likes of Ashburton have just gone an hour either side, so they have used the maximum period for the slower speed, and they have just gone out and done all of them at one go. So there are will be maybe some smaller differences, but I think reasonably well aligned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Did you have a question?
Yes. Yes, I do. Just further sort of on that line of questioning that Deputy Mayor Redmond just had. with regard to the difference between category 1 and 2 schools, with that exception, really, is there any leeway anyhow, even if we had consulted, is there really much of any leeway other than what kind of signs should we put here, static or electronic? Because the rule is quite specific as to a category 1 school being 150 meters out and a category 2 being 300 meters out. Would that have actually created anything different than what we've come to anyhow?
I suspect there would be very limited ability to change. You're correct that a category 1 school, was required to be 30 kilometres an hour, so that's basically everything that is urban has to be 30. There's no wiggle room in terms of that. Probably where there's a little bit more ability to adjust is some of the rural schools. But then from protecting children and providing a safe environment, I think there's the slower we can make some of these and the more consistent we can make these areas, the more likelihood we get compliance, and then the safer we can make those environments for children.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been. Yeah,
Yep.
sorry, I'll save that. But thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? So, colleagues, you tend to see that I try and curb opinions being stated. Minor, but as long as it's followed by an immediate question, is meeting the test. But getting into debate before the debate, yes. And I do try and keep it on keel. And if I fall out of it, I'm happy for you to remind me as well. But it just keeps us efficient and within standing orders. So I think we will take the group as a whole because they are all linked. The G wording again was
Implementation is subject to NZTA co-funding approvals, which is currently under consideration.
And so if that doesn't get achieved, you'll need to report back to us in any way to revoke the decision.
That's right. And we will
or
come
a memo back to advise that we've been successful.
Yes, yep, certainly can do
So that's how that will come. So I'm going to move from the chair all the recommendations that are here with that wording added to each area, each of those. I assume that with the Ringira issue that includes North Loburn being electronic, and if that gets knocked back, we will hear. So I'll move that as from the chair. Someone prepared to second that? Seconded Councillor Cairns. I just think it's simple that we move this as one because it's all linked, and I agree with you, Councillor Bartle, and we did discuss this last term. You've got to have a blanket if it's to work in terms of speed limits. We may have our views of lower speed limits and other things and various things, but around our schools, as far as I'm concerned, it's sacrosanct. I don't want it on my conscience that we could have done something to prevent an incident, and increasingly we hear from our schools just how important it is around road safety, and clearly from a rural perspective that's been considered, and that is part of the government's drive in that respect. Hopefully we will receive funding to support this, because without the funding it does make it very difficult to implement. So as we've heard, we're awaiting the report back on that, and once we're advised if it is successful, then it will be implemented. If it's not, well, it'll be a decision back to here to determine whether or not we wish to proceed or revoke that. There has been extensive work that's gone into this, and I want to acknowledge Peter in particular and Joanne. Thank you for the work that you've done, and also making sure that there's alignment between our community boards, because it's a very big matter. As we've previously discovered, going through speed limits, especially when they cross various board boundaries, has been an interesting matter, especially when one board has a different view to another. So we've tried to make sure that there's as best as possible alignment on this, and in this instance that's a prime example of that. So without that condition added, I fully support what is proposed. Seconder, Councillor Keyes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I endorse your comments. I also would like to pass on my thanks to Peter Daly and the amount of work that he actually has done by visiting all the community boards and all the schools, ensuring that they are well involved in terms of the process. And I look forward to the co-funding from NZTA. As far as making our tamariki, our children, safe when it comes to them going to school and leaving school, it's intuitively obvious that we have to do that sort of thing. So I encourage everybody else to vote in favour of this recommendation. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Councillor Meanings.
Thank you. Look, we have gone through quite a comprehensive process here, and it's fairly prescriptive rules. And with the exception of a few rural schools, which are Category 2, but such as Clarkville and Ahoka School, which currently already have a 40-kilometre speed limit anyhow, I think that they've done a really good job of weighing up all of the issues and coming up with the right answer. Like, for instance, I know that those communities would not accept having the speed limit go up to 60 rather than down to 30. That makes more sense. The state that I'm from, all school zones are 15 miles an hour. All the time, everywhere. That's just how it works. So when you're around a school, that's what you do if you don't want a ticket. And having this be a lot more uniform, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, because we could make a really big dog's breakfast out of this if we had a lot of bespoke things that were different from one school to the next. And having done the exercise of going through and sitting down with all of these schools and talking to them with what they want, they made their desires very loud and clear, and it's gone through the community boards, and we have looked at all of these things. Sometimes they feel a little bit of a funny fit, but more or less, I think we've got it right here, and I'm happy to support what we've got in front of us. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Fulton, followed by Councillor Redmond.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I acknowledge that, you know, the value and uniformity and in lower speeds around schools for starters. And I do acknowledge Joanne and Peter and the work with community boards and council. I did feel the conversation was directed a little bit around that we could have a bit of more horses for courses between Category 1 and Category 2. And some of the feedback seems to me came from the schools that possibly in the Clarkvilles, the West Eatons, that could have maintained at 40. So I just feel that you've got to be careful in that conversation about going to them, you know, and saying, what do you think? And in fact, if the driver for staff is actually uniformity and standardisation, are you going to leave them then thinking, you know, why did you ask my opinion? But for safety's sake, uniform and for standardisation, ease of understanding, 30, I think I can live with that. Yeah, it's just that little balancing act that you get in consultation, you know, when people are surprised at the other end. But overall, I'm willing to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Redmond, Deputy Mayor Redmond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When considering speed limits, we do need to balance, in my view, safety and efficiency. In this case, I accept that schools mean safety is paramount in that balancing process. I would have supported a lesser time period, possibly. Currently, most areas that I drive through have a 30-minute window. But anyhow, as Councillor Fulton said earlier, I'm not dying in the ditch over there.
Let's see where this is going.
And the Mayor has alluded to the interesting case of two community boards coming up with different speed zones for the same road, and that was Flaxton Road. Correct. And I found that quite entertaining at the time. It did get resolved in the finish, so there aren't two speeds, one coming into Rangiora and one going out on the other side of the road. So at the end of the day, this is always going to be a balancing act. I would have been interested in some of the wider public's views, but nevertheless, this is a legislative requirement, so we do have to do it, and I understand the reasons for doing it, so for that reason I'll be supporting it.
I just noticed the grate was saying to our CEO we might need to get that light fitting like that.
Oh, I see.
You don't want it to land on you.
Same over there.
Oh, right. Right. So if you're wondering why we were looking skywards, that was why.
There was a halo.
Of course, Councillor Geards. Any further speakers? No further speakers? There's nothing to respond to. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Thanks, Joanne. There's a big piece of work there, so we appreciate all that effort that's gone in. Right. Gosh. Right. I think that's all the business we've got to deal with. We dealt with the supplementary agenda. There was nothing else here, Courtney, is there? So I have no questions, understanding orders, no urgent general business. Our next ordinary meeting is scheduled for Tuesday the 2nd of December. We've got workshop and briefing this afternoon. So, I think that starts from 12:15. Look, there's a briefing item I wouldn't mind just having with you all now. Shouldn't take long, but we'll just see.